Welcome back to Booktube. I'm DW Sauer, and today what we're going to discuss is my journey with Dark Days. I don't know what type of title, if I'm going to stick with this from Dream to Nightmare is pretty appropriate, so maybe I'm going to stick with that. But the dream that became a publication to the nightmare that it became slash is pretty fitting. So I'm going to go into all that, plus how Polar Press got started. So this goes back a while, like over a decade as far as time frame goes. I was in between teaching jobs. I was working a part-time job. Well, actually it was full-time hours, but it was not great pay. But my buddy saved me from being just flat broke and everything as in between teaching gigs. And this story relates to my education journey, but I'm going to move forward. If you're interested in my education journey, that's going to be coming up later. So when I was with this temporary job, I was kind of lost in what to do. I didn't know if I was going to get back into education. I had no clue, didn't know what to do. I had a master's in history, so I was like, well, instead of just wasting that, what can go hand in hand with this degree? So I started a library science degree, went into that program. I was working in that program, and my first year, it was right towards the end of my first year of that program, I ended up getting a teaching job. So I moved across the state, got this new teaching gig, and well, it was not fun for that first year. Honestly, on a daily, I was worried about losing my job. I didn't know how the test scores were going to come out, all this. I mean, it was extremely stressful. And I had just finished that first year of teaching. I just finished that program as well. So I graduated with my master's, and I had an archives and special collections certificate. So I, in theory, could go and work in archives and special collections. Well, the problem is trying to get a job in that was extremely difficult because I didn't have a lot of experience, brand new out. So I was still like, oh man, this is tough. Did I just make another bad choice? And another degree, more debt, all this stuff, not enjoying this new teaching gig. I didn't know really what to do, but I was fairly certain I needed to do something to get out of the classroom as far as like teaching on a daily, because honestly, it was, like I said, it wasn't a fun experience. The stress was brutal. And so, to give you an example of the stress, I mean, I, like many, tend to be a stress eater, and not tend, for me, I am a stress eater. And pizza was delicious. I was overly stressed. So I started eating. I gained 50 pounds in less than 2 years because I was just stress eating. Because like I said, I already had lost one teaching job. Go into that in another podcast. And with this one, almost on a daily, I was worried if I was going to have a job for the next year. Thankfully, that second year, I did have a job, but it still wasn't great. It was still extremely stressful. And so I ended up talking to the director of the program that I had just graduated with. I was like, maybe can I come back and do my library certification so I can be a school librarian? And she was awesome. I love that program. All the professors were great. And she allowed me to come back. I went through and got almost every single course done. The only thing I needed to do was I needed essentially just 1 year of library experience. But while I was doing this, I took a young adult lit course, which was required. No problem. But it was the same story is what I felt like with all the young adult, because I didn't just listen, like I didn't just read the books for the course. I was reading other books in addition, because I'm like, if I'm going to go into the library, I need to know what's out there. So I was reading a lot for the course. I was reading a lot on my own, trying to figure out what was out in the young adult world. And I kept reading these books, and I was like, man, this is the exact same book I just read, and all followed the exact same format and everything. And I was bored with it. So I thought, well, I got some time. Maybe I can do something better. Maybe, right? But one of the things that I was against was the fact that these female characters, strong characters for the most part, people I thought were just going to be amazing, ended up turning into one of the worst characters because they fell in love. So that kind of started this downward spiral of I need to be saved. I need you to fight my battle, all this other stuff. Now, there might be a list of comments in this section. Well, that's not true. I've not read this story like that. I'm like, I don't, that's what I was reading. And honestly, I would have to go back and really do my research on what those books were. Cause like I said, this has been almost 10 years ago, but I just didn't care for it. And I was doing my research and blogs, posts, everything doesn't matter, or news articles, all that stuff. It was all about the same format. And that was part of the format. It was one, you had to have romance. Two, you had to have a very strong male cast to help this female character out. And there were some other exceptions to it. I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like this formula. I don't like this theory, this thought, whatever you want to call it. So I thought I would do something different. So I started Dark Days because one, I love supernatural and all those things as well, the horror, all that stuff. But I really thought that I could make a strong female character who didn't need saving, who yeah, has some male friends, but she's not gonna be like, yeah, y'all go fight. I'm gonna go over here and work behind the scenes or something like that. I wanted a female character that can be as brutal as any male. And I wanted a female character that didn't have to have romance. So I wrote this book, wrote Dark Days. And wow, was I wrong. You always hear in a number of changes, but you talk about, or people talk about, or have talked about, or they try to get you inspired by the fact that J.K. Rowling had been through dozens of rejections. I mean, I've seen one that was like low as like 45 rejections. And I'm like, I got that in a month one time, you know? So anyone who was a publisher and agent that accepted unsolicited manuscripts, I sent my query letters to. I mean, it was hundreds. I mean, I spent several years trying to get this signed by somebody. Well, I wasn't having any luck. And I was still really new to the self-publishing aspect of things. Didn't know anything about like the Kindle publishing, any of that. So I ended up connecting with an editor through Instagram and ended up going, wow, I know why. There was so much that needed to be fixed. So much that needed to be fixed. I mean, a lot. So I understand as far as like the grammatical aspect, why things got rejected. I get it. I still had faith in the story though. Still had faith. So I ended up getting edited, going through all the corrections, making the corrections. And I really enjoyed that experience because I'm like, okay, I'm seeing what I'm doing wrong. I see how I need to improve as a writer. Gotcha. Right. Ended up sending a query to 3 different publishers. 2 of them were 100% self-publishing, but they were big names in the game. Like they, according to at least what they had broadcast and advertised out online, they had, I think like at least 50 years. I think one of them was like in business for like the past 115, 20 years or something like that. And then I had one that did it all. They did they did hybrid and traditional publishing. And I was like, well, hopefully I can get a contract with this because roughly, and it took less than 2 weeks, I got 2 emails back. One from a solo self-publishing only company. And then I've got one from the does everything publishing. I never heard back from the third one, but at least I got 2 back. And so after talking with both parties, I was like, well, the does it all type of publishing. I'm trying not to say names as well because this might seem negative towards the publisher, and I'll explain that, even though I'm trying not to sound negative. Okay. So I ended up signing with the publisher that does everything because they offered a hybrid contract. So the hybrid contract meant that if I meant everything, like met all their expectations, especially the sales, I would get book 2 out. Now, one of the things I've always been transparent or try to be transparent, I'd actually try to be transparent with all this, but one of the things is I wanted this to be a minimum of 9 books, possibly upwards of 15 books. So I was like, wow, yeah, I'm definitely like, I mean, this one here is a self-publisher and that's it, just one and done. And I would have to pay for another one. So the opportunity to put out book 2 with a traditional contract. Yeah. Okay. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to sign it because honestly, the price was very comparable. Like it was like, honestly, don't even think it was like $100 difference type deal. So that was pretty pretty good. Like, I mean, it's the same dollar amount as far as paying for, but I got this possibility of putting out the second book. So, yeah, I went with the does everything publisher. Man, I wish I knew then what I know now. So, I got a contract for Dark Days. I signed it, thought it was good. Things went south. Now, things went south, not just with the publishing world, but with the world as a whole. Because now we're talking about initially when I started writing Dark Days, it was roughly around 2013. Now we're roughly 6 years later. This is right around 2019. And we're going through their editing, their cover design, all this stuff. Everything's going. And they're ready to put out the book roughly in October of 2019. I'm thinking, if I can remember some of this stuff right. But the problem is I wasn't ready because of the way they did things. Now, one of the things I had thought I was going to do correctly might have been wrong, but I thought that if I've got this professionally reviewed, then this is going to help. It's going to help viewers, like readers, like, okay, this has got some credibility to it. They're saying that it's this type of book. That's what I thought. Now, the way this company does things, and it's not necessarily bad, I'm just going to explain the reason why things got even delayed further. So